About the only midterm success for Republicans was the one that was a given, the absolute baseline achievement, but probably the most important one too, the ousting of Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House, made official on Thursday not just by the election results removing her party from power, but by her own resignation from party leadership. She says she's off to try something new and exciting. She's going to try defending the Constitution now.
Speaking for the people of San Francisco, serving the great state of California, and defending our Constitution. I will not seek re-election to Democratic leadership in the next Congress.
Be careful what you wish for, though. The frontrunner to replace her as Democratic leader is New Yorker Hakeem Jeffries, something of a conspiratorial election denier himself, pushing Russian collusion misinformation as recently as after the 2020 election. A man who maintained that Kyle Rittenhouse was a murderer even after all the facts were delivered at trial, a statement apparently only disagreeable to insurrectionists, cult members, and other far-right extremists, he says. So we should do the non-extreme thing and lock Kyle up and throw away the key. Though, in fairness, perhaps he has moderated. After all, he's at least willing to consider the possibility that maybe Donald Trump is not, in fact, a member of the KKK.
But you called the president the Grand Wizard.
But of course I don't believe that the president is a card-carrying member of the KKK.
It is often an unwise bet these days to say it can't possibly get any worse. Still, with Nancy Pelosi, I will take my chances, if only because she was skilled at imposing her will. I'm not convinced her replacement will be so competent. In considering her decision last week, Nancy said the recent alleged hammer attack on her husband Paul would be a major factor.
Well, I have to say my decision will be affected about what happened the last week or two.
Will your decision be impacted by the attack in any way?
Yes.
It will.
She didn't clarify in the interview if the attack would strengthen her resolve to fight on or if it would intimidate her into retreat. But apparently, the fear of drug addict nudists threatening to bash her brittle kneecaps into pieces was just far too great, or so we're supposed to believe, based on nothing more than a written secondhand account that says so. You don't get to see it. You don't get to hear it, even though it's all captured on body cam video and in a 911 call. Just to listen and believe and accept that this woman faces a threat that none of us commoners could possibly understand, unless, of course, we just took a stroll down the streets of San Francisco ourselves, in which case we'd see all sorts of horrors far more graphic than any night at the Pelosi's gone wrong. And emphasis on horrors we could actually see ourselves. The trouble with the Pelosi attack story is we can't. We get what they tell us, not what they show us, and what they tell us has changed several times now. First, the attacker David DePape was in his underwear, but then he wasn't. First, there was a third person present at the house, but then there wasn't. And even if you want to blame that confusion on bad reporting, the conflicting information has come from law enforcement too. Notably, the district attorney's court filing says that Paul Pelosi opened the door for police himself. But the federal indictment from the Justice Department says police opened the door and let themselves in. It's a strange discrepancy considering the DA confirms the entire attack is on body cam footage from these officers. So this fact isn't as remembered or as described, it's as recorded on video. So in this case, it's not just listen and believe, it's actually listen to conflicting claims of fact and believe. It's not just turn your brain off. It's actually rewire it to accept contradiction and, of course, to reject any information otherwise. Recall a report from NBC's Miguel Almaguer 2 weeks ago in which he cited anonymous law enforcement sources familiar with the investigation who made 3 key new claims. Number 1, it was in fact Paul Pelosi who opened the door.
After a knock and announce, the front door was opened by Mr. Pelosi.
Number 2, when he opened the door and greeted police, Paul Pelosi was not in distress. He didn't even seek assistance, actually. He walked away from police and back toward his attacker.
The 82-year-old did not immediately declare an emergency or try to leave his home, but instead began walking several feet back into the foyer toward the assailant and away from police. Why Pelosi didn't try to flee or tell responding officers he was in distress is unclear.
And number 3, Paul Pelosi and the attacker David DePape spent about 30 minutes together before police arrived, apparently without any significant harm done.
And we still don't know exactly what unfolded between Mr. Pelosi and the suspect for the 30 minutes they were alone inside that house before police arrived.
That report aired on national TV the morning of November 4th. It was also posted online for just a few hours until NBC mysteriously retracted it, saying only that the story, quote, did not meet NBC News reporting standards, but not describing how. An anonymous NBC source later told the Washington Post the retraction was made because the primary source for the story was unreliable, but again, no details on how or why this source is wrong. And then this past Tuesday, that reporter, Miguel Almaguer, was suspended by NBC. He has not been on the air, and he has not said anything publicly since that report was published and then retracted. He's now under internal investigation at NBC, who won't describe the details of this move either, and presumably they've put Almaguer on some sort of paid leave, contingent upon him shutting up too. And sure, as a business matter, NBC is perfectly entitled to the privacy of their own internal affairs, but as a public interest matter, why can't they just explain what about this story was wrong? The longer that they won't, the more likely it is that they can't, because the underlying facts are actually correct. And now, that is not just speculation, that is supported by additional investigation. A reporter at NBC's local affiliate, NBC Bay Area, Bigad Shaban, likewise got curious about the conflicting accounts from law enforcement about what happened at the Pelosi door and went searching for the reason why. But first things first, the local news team has to qualify repeatedly that this very minor detail doesn't actually matter at all, and it's really weird that you conspiracy theorists think it does.
In the end, does it really even matter whether he opened the door, or the guy opened the door, or the police opened the door? I mean, how does that change the scenario if you move away just conspiracy theories?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is right now, Jess, we have no reason to believe that it matters at all. But when two police agencies give slightly different accounts of what happened in this kind of high-profile case like this one, it just feeds into conspiracy theories, and that's what we're seeing right now on social media. People inventing crazy stories based on something as simple as who actually opened the door.
Why are people so conspiratorial about it? Well, for the same reason that your station has interest in doing this story, because the facts are not established in evidence. They're established only in claim. Well, does it really even matter? Yes, it does. Police forcibly entering the home and Paul rushing to their aid implies distress. By contrast, Paul opening the door himself and calmly greeting police and then walking away from police back toward his attacker implies not. It's a fact at the center of the question. Was Paul being attacked, or was he just hanging out? NBC Bay Area has a source within law enforcement, presumably within San Francisco law enforcement, since he's putting himself at odds with the feds. This source has personally seen the body cam video, and this source confirms many of the details in Miguel Almaguer's mysteriously retracted report. The claim that Paul Pelosi opened the door is confirmed by this source.
Officers knocked on the door of the Pelosi home, then backed away. And the video clearly shows Paul Pelosi open the door with his left hand.
The claim that Paul Pelosi did not rush out of the house to seek police assistance, instead he had a calm conversation indicating no distress, is confirmed by this source.
The source tells us the body cam video shows officers having a brief conversation with Pelosi and David DePape. That's the man accused of breaking into the Pelosi home, before DePape starts beating Pelosi with a hammer.
And while the district attorney won't directly confirm what this anonymous source says, when asked, she didn't deny that Paul behaved this way either. She appears to grant the premise and says that Paul will have to explain his behavior to a jury.
Are you able to shed any light as to why Paul Pelosi didn't run out of the house towards police officers when he was able to actually open the door for them when they arrived?
What I'm not able to do is to speculate or try to place my opinions on why someone acted the way they did. All we have is what happened. Everybody reacts to situations differently, and he will one day need to explain, right, to potentially a jury why he did what he did.
If this commentary from not just an additional reporter and not just an additional source, but now from the DA herself as well, appears to align with now suspended reporter Miguel Almaguer's story, then on what basis is he suspended? What did he say that's wrong? And if it is wrong, how did all of these other people get it wrong too? That is the question for NBC News to answer, on what basis we should trust the integrity of their reporting standards when they don't even have the integrity to explain them, or how the story that supposedly violated them got it wrong anyway. And of course, the second question to answer is the one I ask almost every video at this point. I realize I'm pretty much becoming the ancient aliens guy, but the question stands: exactly what in the hell are the feds doing? Why are they lying? Is a more direct way of phrasing it. And of course, to say lie implies intentional deception, but given the circumstances, I see no other way to characterize it. The feds did not say that police opened the door because of mistaken witness testimony. The feds did not say that police opened the door because of misunderstood police description. The feds said that police opened the door despite clear body cam footage that shows otherwise. That is a lie, the best defense for which is they did not in fact watch the video, but bringing an indictment without reviewing the evidence first would be a comparable problem of dishonesty anyhow. So why does it matter, NBC Bay Area reporter lady? It matters because once again, it shows the Justice Department crafting a narrative despite the evidence, not guided by it. It's like asking, does it really matter if your friend lies about stupid stuff like being prom queen 20 years ago? Yes, it does matter, particularly when there's a habit of it, because people with a sketchy relationship with the truth maintain that sketchy relationship in all contexts, from matters as insignificant as what they had for lunch to things as important as a criminal prosecution. Little lies indicate big lies. So what big lie are they building with this little one? The actual conspiracy theory is believing these people at face value without seeing any of the evidence for yourself. Believe what you can see, not what you're told. Somehow we now call that the mantra of a crazy person, but we used to call it curiosity. But credit to the station for remembering the value of that curiosity despite their own self-sabotage of qualifying these questions into meaninglessness. Now that same curiosity applies to the next questions in the sequence. Why are the feds lying? And why is a national reporter gagged and suspended for reporting these exact same facts? Pretty soon, we'll learn it's actually that reporter who's tied up with hostile captors swinging hammers at his kneecaps. Here's hoping he gets the same courtesy pee break to make a phone call for help. Thanks as always for listening and for supporting this channel. Always appreciate that thoughtful discussion down below, and especially over on Gab. That is at ML Christiansen. You're always welcome to coming out and chat in my live streams. Those are linked down in the description. Looking forward to it.